This episode is brought to you by La Quinta by Wyndham. Your work can take you all over the place, like Texas. You've never been, but it's going to be great because you're staying at La Quinta by Wyndham. Their free Bright Side breakfast will give you energy for the day ahead. And after, you can unwind using their free high-speed Wi-Fi. Tonight, La Quinta. Tomorrow, you shine. Book your stay today at lq.com.
Today on CityCast Chicago, what's the latest with construction at O'Hare? When are those cicadas coming? And how do you find parking in the city? I'm here with executive producer Simone Ali Sayed to get some answers. It's Tuesday, April 9th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. What's up, Simone? How you feeling today?
I'm all right, Jacoby. How are you?
I'm doing good. It was a busy weekend. Watched a lot of basketball, still trying to put my apartment together. It is Tuesday, which means you are back in the saddle, and I'm coming to you to explain some big stories around the city of Chicago. And we got to start off with what the hell is going on at O'Hare. They have been talking about construction for the last few years, and now Brandon Johnson is proposing a deal with the airlines to maybe speed up construction of this new global terminal. Simone, honestly, I checked out a while back when we started talking about airport construction. What's the latest?
Yeah. So, right, let's kind of take a step back here and talk about what is happening at O'Hare overall, right? Back in 2018, then Mayor Rahm Emanuel announced this big plan to expand the airport, specifically in lots of different ways. There's like a lot of projects that are associated with it, but sort of the signature pieces were creating this new global terminal and two satellite terminals to increase gate capacity and just generally make it easier to travel through O'Hare, particularly connecting international and domestic flights and just kind of getting people moved through, reducing some congestion that O'Hare had kind of become known for in the decades previously. And originally, there was a budget of $6.1 billion for this huge expansion, and it was going to be paid for primarily by the two airlines that have made O'Hare their hub, right? United and American Airlines were going to foot the bill for a lot of this. Now, a lot has happened since 2018, right? We had a whole pandemic.
Including that price tag going up.
Yes, exactly. That price tag has gone up, and there have been a lot of worries about can the city actually do this in the timeline, given a reasonable price? And there's been a lot of back and forth, especially since Brandon Johnson took office, over how this was going to happen. The latest in this sort of saga is that Johnson is proposing a deal with the airlines, with United and American, to change the order of construction. Originally, those two satellite terminals I mentioned were supposed to be constructed first, but the airlines have asked and have pushed for doing this global terminal, the new Terminal 2, doing that first, right? And this is a big project designed by the studio that's headed by Jeannie Gang, famous architect in Chicago. And they have said that we should build that global terminal first and get that done rather than doing the satellites first. And it's kind of looking like that Johnson is maybe siding with them on the order of construction here, but is saying that, all three bits are still going to be done.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the benefit? Because it seems like the airlines have wanted to put the global terminal first. Like, what is their reasoning behind that?
Well, they get a fancy new global terminal. You know what I mean? Like, they get sort of it's the part of the whole construction that I think benefits them the most in many ways, because basically that they have a modern terminal rather than one that was constructed during the Kennedy administration. You know what I mean? So that is sort of the key thing that's like really, really important to them. The thing about adding those satellites and adding more gates is it actually allows for more competition at O'Hare, right? Those gates are used not just by United and American, right? They're used by the other airlines that are at O'Hare as well. And this is something that Senator Dick Durbin has pointed out. Durbin has been really, really gung-ho about keeping the original construction order, doing the satellites first and then doing the terminal. That's sort of what his argument is that we need to increase that gate capacity first, to make O'Hare the hub, right now O'Hare is the something like the fourth busiest airport in the country. It was at one point the busiest airport in the country until it was surpassed by Atlanta back in the late 90s. And Durbin is really gung-ho about sort of maintaining Chicago's status as, a hub for air travel and for travel in general. But, I think Johnson and what the city is sort of seeing is, these airlines, theoretically, they don't have to keep O'Hare as their hub, right? And so there's maybe some worry that, American could, start routing more flights not through Chicago, routing flights elsewhere, which would then reduce the business that O'Hare is bringing in.
I want to stay here. I know you're not like a sort of a business expert in this particular field, but we've heard that so much that O'Hare is this huge business terminal. We've talked, especially throughout my lifetime, about how much traffic goes through it. And it's simultaneously both a badge of honor, but it is also a headache. Why is it important for Chicago to have that? Because I've heard, Dallas Fort Worth airport is surpassing us as manufacturing moves to Texas. Denver is threatening us as a hub for major global travel, whether it's United or Southwest. Atlanta has passed us. Like, is that tied into people's scare about businesses leaving Chicago? Like, are those two things hand in hand, or does it not matter, how busy our airport is, at least for the economy or the health of Chicago?
Well, I think there's sort of two levels here. One, there is sort of the level of the airport itself is an economic generator, right? The money that is spent at O'Hare Airport, is money that's going to be flowing into the city. United Airlines is an airline that is based here. The airlines that have hubs here, those are employers in this city. And so there's that sort of the airport itself is an economic engine, right? And a driver of dollars coming through Chicago.
Great point.
Even if not all the passengers that are coming through O'Hare are coming to Chicago, it's still important that there's a lot of passengers coming through there and moving through and spending money at the airport, and that, these airlines can employ more people to accommodate that, right? So there's that element of it. And then secondarily, right, Chicago wants to be attractive for people to visit, for people to come here, whether that's for business or for pleasure tourism, right? And so you have to have a modern airport to attract those people. And so that's sort of the other piece of the economic development part of of course we want people to come and visit Chicago and come stay in our hotels and come spend money at our local businesses. But where do they got to get through first? They got to get through the airport. And if the airport is old and congested and it's hard to get through, maybe people go elsewhere, right? Or maybe people, I don't know how big of a factor that is in people's decisions to vacation in a place. But I do think that's another key part of it. And I think those airports that you mentioned, Denver, Dallas, have all seen really big renovations in recent years that have helped them to sort of compete with a hub like Chicago.
This episode is brought to you by ShipStation. If you run an e-commerce business, you know how much work it takes to produce something great while dealing with complicated shipping issues. That's why over 130,000 companies have turned to ShipStation, an innovative tool that allows you to focus less on shipping and more on building your brand. With ShipStation, you can manage orders, label printing, reporting, and customer service on one easy-to-use dashboard. You'll reduce warehouse costs with reliable enterprise solutions and save thousands on shipping costs with discounts up to 89% off. Plus, you can effortlessly import orders from everywhere you sell online. So, turn your shipping challenges into opportunities for growth. Go to ShipStation.com and use code POD to sign up for your free 60-day trial. That's ShipStation.com, code POD.
Obviously, the airport conversation has an impact on the tens of thousands, millions of people who travel to and through Chicago every year. But Chicago is planning for millions, even billions of new visitors over the next couple of months. It ain't got nothing to do with the airport. They are not coming through O'Hare. They are coming straight up through the soil. And of course, I'm talking about cicadas. This Friday, Chicago officials issued an advisory about the upcoming cicada emergency, alerting residents of what to expect. And we've been talking about this for a few years, but it's really starting to hit close and my skin is crawling because I'm thinking back to my childhood when I saw a cicada emergence for the first time, and it absolutely freaked me out. Simone, first, can you remind us of this advisory? What is the city warning people of? What should we expect? But then also I need to know a little bit of your own personal history with cicadas because you also didn't grow up knowing what they were.
No, we do not have these really cicada emergences in the Pacific Northwest where I grew up. So this was entirely new to me the first time I moved to the Chicago area. So here's kind of just the breakdown of what to expect. Number one, these cicadas. So people in Chicago are like, why are we talking about this in April? Isn't this a late summer thing? What is going to happen is these what they're called periodic broods, these specific broods of cicadas that emerge every 13, every 17 years, are going to be emerging throughout the country, but especially in Illinois. And they emerge earlier than the broods that we are typically used to here, which is so basically from now through the rest of the spring, we're on cicada watch. At some point between starting in around late April, we are expecting to see these periodic broods start to emerge. And that this is going to be, again, very different from what we normally see every summer, just in the sheer volume of bugs that we're going to see in our trees and on the ground as they die. This specific combination of broods hasn't happened in a couple centuries, but there was some reports from 1990 when there was a different sort of large emergence of cicadas where people in Chicago were using snow shovels to clear the sidewalks of dead cicadas.
They are everywhere. They cover the trees. You can see the holes in the ground. They're all on the side of buildings. It honestly, the first time I walked outside, it was so blanketed, I didn't notice it until I looked at the ground and then paid attention to the sound, because the sound is also so piercing that in some ways it can just sort of blend into the background. It's very weird. I remember, so this was my story when I first came to, I went to Northwestern, and when I arrived in Evanston in August of, this would have been 2011, I remember walking around campus and I was like, are there fire alarms going off at every single building on campus? I thought they were like testing alarms, and then it kept going for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, what is happening? And somebody had to be like, those are cicadas. And I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, we just live like this. This is the sound that we hear in our day-to-day life. It's important to note that cicadas are mostly harmless. You know, they don't bite. They're not poisonous. They're not even really, for the most part, not going to affect your plants that much. Some trees maybe as they, breed and lay eggs and stuff like that. But really the thing to watch out for is just, again, the volume and the noise. They can be slippery when you get a bunch of them crushed up on the pavement, which is, again, very gross. But the other thing that the city has noted in its advisory is that neighborhoods where there are older homes and less new construction might see a higher volume, and that's because the eggs that have been living underground have basically been undisturbed, whereas in new construction, they may have been crushed because people were digging around. Oh, my Lord. I mean, apparently the sound that we are referencing is the mating call of the male cicada attempting to attract a female cicada who will then flap their wings to let them know they want to mate. But I've been reading stories that amongst the trillions of cicadas that are going to release across the country, some of them are going to be apparently hypersexual zombie cicadas. Yes, zombie cicadas with sexually transmitted diseases are likely to be coming out alongside, and they will, participate in their normal activity of mating across their 10 weeks of being out and about. But yeah, apparently zombie cicadas is the new headline we should be watching out for. Again, no impact on us directly, but will have an impact on the species.
Okay, Jacoby. I need, we had a solar eclipse this week. We are waiting for the emergence of millions of bugs. I am a little worried if we're going to have, some air quality issues again this summer due to fires. Are we going to have another round of torrential flooding like we had last summer? This is starting to feel biblical, apocalyptic.
Summertime Shia-geddon.
You know what I mean? It just seems like, the world is, it's really throwing a lot at us very quickly.
I'm glad I'm not huge into conspiracy theories because, yes, the sun being blocked out, obviously, all of these are natural phenomena. It feels like end times when you say it all like that.
When you put it all together, I don't want to. This is like the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Can we get a Super Bowl before the planet blow up? Come on, man. Can we get something nice?
That's what your thought is. That's what you want is you want the Bears to win a Super Bowl before the bugs take over,
and the Kennedy construction to be over, maybe.
And the Kennedy construction,
maybe the Kennedy construction to be done.
What can we get done before the apocalypse? I don't know. It's a great question.
Before we get out of here, parking in Chicago. We had this conversation last week because obviously it is street sweeper season, which means it is increasingly difficult to just park your car in Chicago and walk away. You need to be more on guard for any street sweeper signs that are permanently there, any of those orange signs that are affixed to trees. But it kind of got all of us really, annoyed is not the right word because we do want our street swept. But it got us a little annoyed because it's already tough enough to park in Chicago. And so we asked listeners through Hey Chicago, our daily newsletter, what's the worst part about parking in Chicago? Simone, what did some of them have to say?
Yeah, I think people will definitely vibe with a lot of the responses we got. Lisa P. said, no parking on side streets on the north side, specifically in Edgewater. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. And I picked this out because I felt this very deep in my bones. I live on the north side, and there is basically, you get all the residential parking permit signs.
Gee, the number of permit parking signs that increase exponentially as you get further and further north. Anytime I'm trying to host somewhere up north, anywhere I'm trying to go out to a concert or something, parking on the side street. Even if you're not around like Wrigley, where it's like, no game day parking. No, they're like, if you don't live here, do not park here, and we will tow your ass.
Similarly, Elizabeth L. points out that those permit parking signs are hard to find. Sometimes you might see them at the end of a long block, but not the other, or they're rotated 90 degrees, so you can't see them when you're actually parking. And so it's confusing. If you don't know, I think especially when I first moved here, it wasn't always clear to me, oh, does this apply to the whole block? Is it just this area? Is it just this half of the block? Where does this stop? Is it just literally everywhere? And at this point, I think I've pretty much just given over to the idea that nope, I can't park anywhere here. None of this is for me.
Yeah, now seeing the residential parking paired with the game day signs, paired with the you can't park here from 9 to 11 just on Monday and Fridays in the morning. Honestly, I didn't realize you could have this many signs, this many parking restrictions in one place. It feels like overkill at this point.
Even on a main street, you'll see the snow parking and the street cleaner sign on the same pole, and you'll see a 15-minute flash flashing lights only, like all on the same sign. And you're like, so just say no parking. Just tell me you don't want me to park here. Another thing that you will appreciate, Jacoby, is more than a couple people mentioned Chicago's parking meter deal, Chicago's infamous parking meter deal. This is under Mayor Daley, when Chicago essentially when we pay the parking meters, we're not paying the city of Chicago, we are paying a private company.
We see none of that.
Yes. And it is a deal that has been much maligned by the people of Chicago. Caroline C. writes, of course, must complain about the scam of a deal the city took however long ago, and how we have to pay them if we want to replace roads, and how we can't incentivize people to take public transportation. Just the actual worst. No better way to get me bugging out and monologuing. I have a feeling you vibe with that, Jacoby.
100%. Because you see, it's a few things here. Not only was the deal a scam, the rates reinforce sort of like that idea of what land is valuable, what neighborhoods are valuable. Because again, to park on State and Roosevelt costs way more than it might to park on 51st and Dorchester. And so now, depending on what part of the city you in, you getting maybe a super inflated price to park. The city's not seeing none of that money. The parking meters take up potential bus only lanes, potential bike only lanes. So we're both discouraging public transit and biking through the infrastructure that prioritizes cars, thus prioritizing parking. And then we're then forced to pay that money for the next 90 years to a private company that's already made back its original investment. We're getting scammed on every side of this deal. And it's quite ridiculous. Paying, $15 to $20 for 2 hours, just to park on the street is wild.
Eric L. is another one of these folks who mentioned the parking deal. I think part of me was broken the day I learned a mayor could sell off public goods to private companies. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Now, we also got a couple of responses that are just about like how aggressive or not aggressively the city fines or tickets. A couple people mentioned the Park Chicago app, which I will say, if you don't have it, you should definitely use it. It is super useful in many ways because it, at least you don't have to go physically to the meter to re-up or whatever you need to do. However, it does leave a lot to be desired because, you have to like fill it with money. You can't just like pay directly from your card. So it's like you have to buy $20 and then say how much you're paying.
And it's $20 as a minimum. So if you only need like $1.66, they're going to charge you $20 just to get that extra $1.66. Bogus.
And occasionally, like if you don't pay for the max, because you have to pay for 2 or 3, or some places it's 4 hours, right, at a max. If you pay under a certain amount, they charge you an extra fee.
I ain't even catch that, G. What?
A couple of people wrote in about that. I have experienced it it just kind of depends. I don't totally know. I don't totally understand. I think it has more to do with like how sometimes you go to the convenience store and you get charged a fee if you use your card, if it's under a certain amount. I think it's that kind of thing. Yeah. And then, we had a couple people who complained about getting a ticket in the 2-minute gap between, one parking expiring and then re-upping it in the app. People talking about a total of 5 minutes where it was unpaid, but they caught you right then. And then some people complaining about, people who are parked in the wrong spaces. So especially you can only park so close to a corner, right? So you don't block the crosswalk or the intersection or anything like that. And a lot of people, I see this on my street all the time. People are parking, in that spot that you're not supposed to be parking in. And somebody complaining about how that is, rarely enforced. And that's sort of one of those things that is in place to keep pedestrians safe so that, again, you're not blocking the crosswalk or anything like that.
What I love about these call outs to Hey Chicago readers, CityCast listeners, that I'm clearly learning is y'all really just want to complain. And I appreciate that. Because if we ask y'all to like give us a coffee shop or something, y'all definitely will give some fantastic suggestions. But if we tell you like, what's the worst deal in Chicago? What's the worst part about parking? What's the worst part of the snow or the extreme heat? Folks really will write in. We really just need to make this a complaint line for people. I appreciate you. And I want you to know that the line is always open. 773-780-0246. Don't even wait for us to ask you. Send your biggest Chicago complaints and you may hear yourself on the podcast. I want to give a huge thank you to our executive producer, Simone Alisea. Whether we're talking bugs, airport travel, or parking in Chicago, it is always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
If you are new to CityCast Chicago, one, don't make this your last day. We are here every single day, Monday through Friday, and have been for the last 3 years. So join the party and get down with the get down, but also realize that the CityCast ecosystem does not stop with the podcast. Subscribe to our daily newsletter, Hey Chicago, by visiting our website, chicago.citycast.fm. Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends with me telling you some good news. And this week, the Chicago Latino Film Festival is back for year number 40 and will screen close to 100 films from all over Latin America, the Caribbean, Spain, Portugal, and the United States. You can check the show notes for a ticket link and listen back to our Guide to April episode when me and producer Michelle Navarro give you a couple of our recommendations. As always, we appreciate you for listening. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. Hopefully you'll join us. Peace. By the time that next 220 year happen, we going to be getting our parking revenue back, hopefully. So, hey, shout out to that. We got something to look forward to in the next 100 years. Speaking of parking in Chicago.
But you know what, Jacoby? Chicago will not have removed all of its lead pipes.
Nope. Next time cicadas come out, we will be getting parking money, but we will still be drinking lead water across the city. Man, talk about long-term urban planning.